All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our second SARC updates and training. Just quickly before we begin, we do have a Q&A feature enabled within the chat. I'm sorry, enabled within Zoom. If you do not see a Q&A that's separate from the chat, you may not have the most recent version of Zoom. You're going to want to have version 5.13 to see that. If you don't, I believe right click on kind of the lower right-hand corner Zoom icon, there'll be a check for updates option, and you can update it there and you'll be able to see the Q&A feature of Zoom. All right, so it's March 16th. We'll get going here on our state agency annual report, our SARC updates and training. Here's an overview of what we'll be covering. And then we'll also be putting some links in chat. And so Brianna, one link I didn't share with you, if you could put in the chat right now, but can you put the WebPass sign up on our CalRecycle website in the chat, please?
Sure.
Give you just a moment to find that. So if you're new and you haven't filled out a SARC report previously, you will need to register for a WebPass prior to being able to have access to our system. As soon as you do that, we'll be able to associate you to your report. All right, I'll go over the instructions for the questions. So please type your questions or a summary of your question into the Q&A pane. We want to really try to keep those questions out of the chat. It just allows us to track them better in there and be able to provide that at a later point in time with questions that were asked as reference for people. CalRecycle staff will go through the questions on a first come, first served basis, and we'll aim to get as many different people as possible. To ask your question, when we cue you, you'll need to unmute yourself on your end, and then please state your name and affiliation. We will not be using the raised hand function. If you cannot unmute or we do not get to your question, or even if you don't have that Q&A feature, you can also submit your questions to our state agency inbox, which is SARC, S-A-R-C, at calrecycle.ca.gov. All right, so we are currently in that March 16th, 10 a.m. to 12. We have one more webinar next week on Monday, March 20th from 1 to 3. We are recording these. We will be posting these to replace our old SARC training videos as soon as we're able to process them for ADA compliance and hopefully make them a little bit easier to navigate to the section in which you're seeking more information on. And we'll send a message out to recycling coordinators when those recordings are available. And I'll just pause for a moment before we actually jump into the report to see if there's any questions.
I don't see any questions at this time.
All right, perfect, thank you. All right. Okay, so the screens that I'll be sharing are kind of in our staging environment. It's all, it's not accurate information in here, but it will go through the process of sharing how you report in our new system. Let me just make sure I have everything online here. So where you first want to start is you'll sign into your report through this portal here. And Brianna, if you could share the link to this portal, please. So at the moment, if you're signing in right now to kind of follow along with me, we have not released the 2022 report, so you won't be able to access it. We plan to release that March 21st. We wanted everyone to have an opportunity to view these trainings first and not really get a head start without understanding some of the changes we made. So if you sign in right now, your report's not going to show up until March 21st as far as a selectable option. And what I mean by that is, where am I going here? I'll go back here. Oh, nope, sorry, that's the wrong one. Is when you first sign in, it'll look like this. So if you do not have the selectable option here, it's because we haven't opened up the 2022 reporting cycle yet. So as soon as you do, you'll select, you'll probably only have one. I have a few in here just for demonstration purposes. Today I'm gonna use the California Department of Child Support Services, just so you can see what it looks like fresh if you haven't entered it already. Okay, so to start, this training is going to demonstrate what a full report looks like, but everything that I go over outside of kind of the specifics on disposal will apply to both full and modified reporters. And a modified reporter is an agency that has 200 or less employees. There's just not quite as much to answer if you're a modified reporter, but for demonstration today, I'm going to be showing a full report. Okay, so when you first log in, you have your summary screen. So we're on the summary tab up here, and you'll see red check marks that we have not completed the sections. And then there's just general summary information as entered or updated by you, the recycling coordinator, and it'll update as you fill out that report. This CalRecycle representative, if you have a name here, is not accurate. If you have any questions, you'll want to email any questions, or if you need assistance, to our SARC inbox, sarc@calrecycle.ca.gov. If you need to access your current or old reports, there's PDF versions over here on the right. So you can kind of compare last year's to this year's to help you fill out your report. I'll pause again just to check to see if there's any questions before I jump into the agency tab.
I don't see any questions right now.
All right, thank you. Okay. So as you get started, you'll see at kind of the top of each of these sections, the red check marks that you haven't completed these sections yet. So in order to complete them, we have to do them one by one. And give me just 1 second. I want to bring up my notes just to make sure I didn't skip over anything. Okay. All right. So to update your agency information, you do still need, even if it's not, if you need to update it, sorry, you click the edit button. This also prompts you for one required information of the number of employees at agency headquarters. And so we split between, because some of you may have just one location where your agency is, some of you may have a headquarters or kind of a main place of business, and then either satellite offices or maintenance yards or state beaches or state parks, depending on what type of agency you are. So this particular question is just kind of asking at your main headquarters building to enter the number of employees. And so since all of us have kind of adopted a hybrid working environment, we'll get into how you tell us about that in a moment, or maybe I think it's maybe on the next section. So here you're just going to strictly report the number of employees employed, whether they're in the office or teleworking. So for example purposes, I'm going to say there's 1,000 people at our headquarters. And I will save that. And you'll see since I edited that information, I get that green check mark that I'm now complete with that section. All right, the contact section may not need to be updated, but you do have to verify the contacts. So you can kind of see over here on the right, contact verified, no. You can also add contacts if you need to, or update contacts if you need to. And how you go about doing that, you do have to go one by one to verify them all. If there's no changes, edit, select contact verified here at the top, and save. And you'll now see that I have a contact verified? Yes. And you have to do these for each contact you have in here. So either make edits if you need to in any of these fields down here, and then select contact verified and save. And last one, just do it quickly, save. So now you can see I have verified all my contacts, and this section is complete. All right. Facility section. In our kind of example here, this particular agency only has one facility. Many of you have more than one, could be even up into the 30s or 50s, potentially more. So all of those will be listed here. If you need to add facilities, you can add facilities here. And in order to complete the facility section on this page, we do need to enter the employees at those satellite offices or maintenance fields or that are assigned to those particular state parks or state recreation areas. And here's kind of our first new feature. Percentage of employees in the office. And so what this is doing for us is giving us a little bit better picture of how much waste is being generated based on the number of humans that are actually in a physical location as opposed to teleworking. Because for the employees, you do want to state the number of employees that are assigned to this location, whether they're teleworking or in the office. We'll say there's 20 assigned here. And then for this percentage of employees, the way to think about it would be if you require your employees to be in the office 1 day per week, then your percentage of employees in the office would be 20%. So I'll just put 20% there. And this section functions slightly differently to verify it. We have two buttons here. So after you've entered all of your employee numbers for all your facilities and all of your percentages for the percentage of employees in each of those locations, you click that update number of employees, click update number of percentage of employees, and now you see that we have completed that section. And if we go back to the summary, you can see that we have now completed those first 3 sections and have green check marks. I'll pause again to see if there's any questions on the agency section.
I don't see any questions.
Okay, excellent. And feel free if something pops up and you want me to go back. We should have plenty of time, even after me going through this entire report, to go back and revisit any of these sections if something doesn't quite make sense. Okay, so now we'll move on to disposal. All right, and you'll notice here, click that edit button at top to open up and activate these fields so we can get into them. And so here is where you're going to enter the percentage of employees in the office at your headquarters. For demonstration, I'm going to say it's that same number. We have everyone coming into the office 1 day per week. So 20% of employees are in the office. And then as far as an explanation, what we kind of, oh, sorry. I want to show these tooltips real quick too. So if you ever forget what I'm saying today, we will have these recordings posted, but we also have these 2 tooltips, which are these little question marks that provide a little bit more information on what we may be asking about a particular section. So you can kind of hover over them. And that example I keep using is in here as well, just to point those out. And in these sections, you want to just explain to us how you came about your numbers. So your numbers of how it was calculated for the number of employees, so checked in with HR, and then how you came about your percentage of employees permanently in the office. And just provide that explanation here. It just kind of helps us understand how you came about your numbers. This particular agency doesn't have a non-employee population, but that non-employee population is referring to students, visitors, inmates, residents, contractors, patients, For those of you that do have this active, I think you're aware of what to put in here. And this just helps us, again, to kind of understand what kind of generation is occurring in your facility and if it makes sense based on the amount of people that are there. All right, this next section, total amount disposed. We're just going to say 100 tons for example purposes here, or we'll go 1,000. And then one change we made here to hopefully make this more clear on what transformation is referring to. So transformation is a very specific thing. Most of you probably do not have transformation. So transformation means the incineration, pyrolysis, distillation, or biological conversion of waste to energy at either of the approved transformation facilities in the state. I believe there's two. There's one in the Stanislaus area and there's one down in Long Beach. So if your agency is nowhere near either one of those, you most likely enter 0 tons here as far as what's transformation. Transformation is not recycling. It's not what this question is asking. This is the very specific activity of burning trash for energy, essentially. And again, since most of you are probably in leased spaces, you don't have a direct tonnage report from your hauler of how to determine how much disposal you had. There's a variety of ways to figure out how much disposal, or estimate, I guess would be the better word. The way we do it at CalRecycle is, since we're one of many agencies that make up a building, we can find out the total building disposal. We divide that by the number of employees total of all agencies in the building, come out with a number of 13.7 pounds per occupant. And then we multiply that by the number of employees for just our agency in particular. That's how we come about our tonnage number here. And you want to do that kind of adding up both your headquarters as well as all your facilities for that total disposal. The annual results is taking your total employee population and total disposal and dividing that down to a pounds per person per day number. You can see based on my example here that I entered values that made us way over kind of our target value of 0.4 pounds per person per day. And this is just an indicator to help us understand your trend as far as disposal. One other thing I want to mention about disposal is I think a lot of you, as we shift to this teleworking environment, are probably doing some office cleanouts, some consolidation, which is generating more trash. So you want to have programs in place to divert as much of those materials as possible, but we do understand that disposal occurs when those remodeling activities or clearing out activities do occur. So even if you have a high disposal and it does put you over target, in this particular example, if there's a reasonable explanation in this field here of why that may occur, this is where you want to put that. So you can say we consolidate, we moved out of 4 of our 5 buildings and disposed of a lot of extra trash because of that. So just use this space to explain to us what's going on. So just help us understand why your disposal may be high or low for that matter. And kind of the same thing here, another opportunity to do so if you are way above your target. All right, so and you'll see kind of as we go throughout here, these little red asterisks. These little red asterisks indicate a required field, so you will not be able to complete that section of the report until you provide an answer in all of those sections. Okay. Here's one area where we kind of simplified the wording of the question, but it's still the same question. And this area here really helps us understand what assistance you may need. If there's difficult materials that you're trying to get rid of, or if there's just materials where there's markets that don't exist to divert them from disposal. So in this first section, you can just list them out. I think food service packaging might be a common one. I think styrofoam is probably also a common one. So you can just kind of list them out in this section. I'll only do the 2 for our examples. And then down here, you explain what the difficulty is. Just a couple of examples of what may be going on for the reason why. And this will also kind of help us if we have some extra information that maybe you don't. It'll allow us to provide some assistance to you to maybe show some light of where you do have access to some of these programs in your area. All right, this bottom section is a new section. It's mattresses section, new, really just reorganized. It existed, but it was just split out between our different program areas. And I'll show you that when we get to that. But we just consolidated the information on mattresses and put it all in one spot instead of splitting it between all the different program areas. So here it's just requiring you to enter the number of mattresses disposed, recycled, reused, or exchanged. I know for a lot of you, this section is not relevant. If it's not relevant, you just enter zeros here because it is still a required field and there's nothing wrong with entering zeros here. And then you could just provide an explanation such as that in this section and you'd be complete. If you do handle these materials and you're having difficulty with recycling, reusing, or exchanging them and having to dispose them all, if you want to provide extra information on what that difficulty is here, that's what this area is for. So once we've filled out that section, we save. And you see we get the green check mark up here. As well as if we go back to summary, we've now completed one more section of our report. And I'll pause again to see if there's any questions on the disposal section.
There are a couple. The first one is from an anonymous participant. It says, if my organization has employees and students, what is the proper way to report the number of students?
So students go in the non-employee population area here. So if you do not have, it looks very similar to this if you already have it activated in your report where you enter the numbers. But if you do not and you have this statement here, you'll want to reach out not to the person identified here, but rather to SARC, SARC at CalRecycle.ca.gov. And we'll be able to activate your report so you can report your student population, but your student population is a non-employee population.
Okay, and we have a second question from Ignacio Vasquez, which states, our HQ building is owned by DGS and they report separately. Do we need to include the numbers as well?
So in those lease spaces, you want to stick to what your agency does. So just report on your agency and the number of employees in your agency. Does that answer your question?
I have unmuted Ignacio if you'd like to ask further.
A quick question. So we're the only tenants in the building and it's owned by DGS and they're reporting for the whole building. Do we still have to submit the numbers? It seems to be a duplicate submission.
Yeah, yes. Is it your headquarters or is it a satellite office?
No, it's our headquarters or our District 11 headquarters. We're the only tenants and it's owned by DGS and it's run by DGS. They handled everything.
What you mean by handle everything is handle all your waste management services?
Yes, for the building, the repairs, whatever.
Right, yeah, so yes, report. Sorry, I'm gonna have to mute you just a little for a second. We'll unmute you if you need to ask more questions, but I'm getting a little feedback. So I'll talk it through and then we'll unmute you again and make sure that we've answered the question. So if you're in a DGS lease space, you still report on your agency. If you are dependent upon DGS and they handle all your waste and recycling services, you are expected to use those services in place. If DGS is not implementing a particular diversion service, such as like food waste recycling as an example, you'll need to reach out to DGS in order to have them implement that for you if they're your point of contact for that. And then at that point, if you're getting resistance from DGS or they're not doing something so that your agency can be compliant, we would like you to reach out to us, and then we'll be able to coordinate with DGS to have them put those systems in place if it's needed for your agency. And then if we could unmute Ignacio, I want to see if that answers his question.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, perfect. Any more questions?
Nope, that's all.
Okay. Oh, that's fun. Give me just one moment. I'm not sure why it kicked me out, but it did. Okay. Programs. So in the program section, we have these 6 sections over here. You can kind of see over here that they all need to be reviewed in order to complete the program section. I'm going to skip over organics recycling and touch on it last. So I'll do the other 5 first, and then we'll talk about organics because it's related to facility organics as well for those of you that have facilities. But I'll touch on organics after covering all the others. So what you do here is open up these sections, click the edit button. We did add a few more options here and also eliminated a few. So before up here, we just had beverage containers, and that seemed a little bit confusing. So we split it out into what we meant by beverage containers. So aluminum cans, glass. I was combining glass and plastics there. And plastics, mostly number 1 and number 2 are what are considered beverage containers. There's some exceptions, but that's most of them. So in this section, you want to select all the items that you recycle, whatever they may be. I mean, I'm just going to select probably the most common ones for most of you. And then you want to select any more that do apply. And this is asking you kind of the ability to recycle them. So since we've moved into this hybrid environment, these materials might not be generated because there's no people generating them. But within those locations, and this is for all of your locations, both facilities and your headquarters, if you have the ability to recycle them, you want to select them here. So it's not asking you about generation, it's asking about your ability to recycle them. And then the other minor tweak we made for those of you that report on mattresses, right about here somewhere used to be an option to select mattresses recycled and enter that number. So we removed it from here and put all of that in that front agency section. And then down here, provide an explanation of either difficulties or changes if you're not recycling as much from the previous year because your hauler doesn't accept them. I think a good example of that might be these plastics numbers 3 through 7. It's a common one that we've seen haulers not taking as much over the last few years. And so if you selected that last year, but then your circumstances changed and you're not selecting it this year, you just want to explain that down in this area. Hauler no longer accepts this material for recycling. And once you're done, you select save. Give it just a moment. There it goes. And you can see a couple indicators that we finished the recycling program section. All right, all of these are similar build. So this is both for headquarters and all your facilities combined. Select all the waste prevention reuse activities that you have. And then again, there's these little tool tips here if you need a little bit more information on what it means by that. So you just select all that apply, whatever they may be for your particular agency. And then again, somewhere around here, had a mattresses options. So again, we remove that from here, move that into the agency section. If there's any additions or subtractions on your waste prevention or use activities, you just want to provide that information down in this section below. And I'm kind of cheating just so you don't have to watch me type a whole bunch of information. But that's where you can talk about either if you have a second chance store like we do, where we can take materials for others to reuse prior to disposal. Select save. And again, kind of get that prompt again up here, and then also an indicator over here that we finished that section. Material exchange, select all that may apply. And there's my little cheater on this one. Just provide that explanation there. I don't think this is accurate for this particular case, but do put up information there to explain your material exchange section. Select save. All right, there was one option removed in here, which kind of related to your fiscal. It was right around here. But in this section, you as a recycling coordinator might not know the answers to these questions. You want to reach out to your procurement unit or procurement division. If it's not you or you don't know the answers to these questions, to ask them these questions so you can report in the SARC report whether these apply or that you're implementing these at your agency. Should have all these in place, but a recycled content product procurement policy and an environmentally preferable purchasing policy. Again, there's a little tooltip here if you're not quite sure what they are. And what this is, it's helping to complete the loop that your agency takes priority to procure as many things that contain recycled content or are purchasing things that have less impact on the environment over ones that may be more hazardous to the environment. The secondary boxes that should also be checked if you do have these top two is that hopefully you're training your staff to use those policies in procurement, and then it's also in your contracts that you send out to bid to procure goods. And then again, you want to provide that explanation here on how you utilize those policies. Select save. All right, training and education. This is another spot where we simplified the text. If you look at your old report, it's on these top four mostly where we simplified the text. What these are referring to is AB 2812. So if you need more information, you can click on the hyperlink here and it'll go to the actual statute on 2812. What 2812 implemented was that each agency is required to have these things. So we hopefully made that more clear in the language we're using here. So you have required dedicated recycling staff to implement recycling programs, have required the signage, signs and posters on your recycling bins for the types of materials that go in there. You're training your employees on the proper use of those bins, and you also have adequate containers for the proper separation and diversion of those materials. So these are required. You do have to have all four of those, and then select anything else that may apply that your agency implements for training and education. And then down in this explanation section, you just want to explain what you do for training and education on recycling programs. And again, training and education, this is your entire agency, headquarters and facilities. All right, so I just want to reiterate one more point here. Actually, that's a bad color. Let's use a different color. So in the program section, these in blue, I'll do this one maybe in red. That's helpful. So the ones in blue are referring to what you have implemented at your headquarters and facilities all together. The one in red in the programs tab, specifically organics recycling, you're only reporting on organics recycling at your headquarters. But before I go there, I want to pause and see if there's any questions on any of the sections I've covered already. All right, I'll take the silence as there's not. We can always come back if something pops up.
Oops, sorry, something did pop up.
Okay.
Larry Hughes said, do you have signs to provide to us or do we need to create our own? Is there sample signs that you can provide?
There are sample signs that we can provide. I don't have that link prepped. I don't know if Brianna or Michelle, if you could go to our state agency's webpage and show them where those educational materials exist.
Yeah, I
We-
put it in the chat.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so we'll put a link in the chat of where some educational materials exist that you can use. And I believe the way that they're structured, that they are Adobe PDFs. So they are generalized. So if some of the things or pictures or words don't apply to your particular agency, you can edit them prior to printing them so that they apply specifically for your agency. Any other questions?
I'm not seeing any other ones.
Okay. All right. Organics recycling is for both. What I talk about now is going to apply, and I'll go to it still, but it applies to both the organics recycling here in the program, which is referring to your headquarters, as well as your organics recycling for any facilities, if facilities exist for you. They're structured exactly the same, but I'll still go to facilities, but just keep that in mind as I walk through this here. Okay, so when you first open up the section, there's only one question, and we simplified this language, hopefully for it to make more sense. So what materials do employees and non-employees generate at this location? Even if it's not a very little amount, or de minimis is how we refer to it, or not very much, I would expect that most of you are at least generating food scraps, food soil paper. Even if it's just one apple core or one banana peel, you would still select these options as being generated. We did change the guidance on green waste and landscape and pruning waste. We put it in the tooltips here. So you're only selecting green waste and landscape and pruning waste if your agency has direct control over management of this material or the contract with the landscaper. So for example, if property management has direct control for management of this material, you do not check this box. So if you're in a leased space and you have a private landlord or it's DGS that handles it, you do not select green waste and landscape and pruning waste as materials that employees for your agencies or non-employees generate. I'm just going to pause for just a moment to see if there's any questions on that.
I'm not seeing any questions.
Okay. It's going to be really, really rare that anyone is able to select this option down here. And this would be maybe if there's no humans present at a location that you might select this. If you do select this, you have to kind of explain why. And again, no organic material is different than very little organic material. If very little is generated, the expectation is to select that those materials are generated, and we'll get to it in just a minute in question number 4 of how that material is handled or managed, or if you have a waiver in place. And one quick thing I want to say about a few things about waivers is there are a handful of you that have submitted waivers. We are processing those. We got quite a few. Our goal is to have those all processed, and you will have that information prior to the release of the report on Tuesday. If you're just submitting a waiver like Friday or Monday, we might not have it processed prior to the Tuesday release. So you might not be able to select the option I'll show you in just a minute. But for those of you who have submitted, we'll have those processed, or at least be communicating with you if we need a little bit more information prior to that Tuesday release. And then if you haven't seen it, We did do a waiver webinar back in January, which we'll put a link in the chat if you weren't able to attend that previously, and you can review that. And it shows you how to fill out those waivers, especially if you have multiple locations. We really try to simplify that process. And I'd highly recommend reviewing that webinar because it walks you through how to submit a waiver and the reasons you can submit a waiver if it may apply to your agency. And if we could put that link in the chat. Okay, so moving on here. So question number 2, hopefully is a lot more straightforward. Simplified this down, only 2 options here instead of the 5 that existed previously. So something I just want to make really clear here is the question itself. And excuse me for just a moment, I need to get a quick drink of water. Okay, so this question is no longer asking about just organics. The question is asking you how much solid waste is generated collectively at this location. So trash, recycling, and organics all together. Just 2 options, 2 or more cubic yards of solid waste per week or less than 2 cubic yards of solid waste per week. And this is where that percentage of employees kind of comes into place. So in this particular example, if you're telling us there's 1,000 people here and select less than 2 cubic yards of solid waste per week, without the context that out of this 1,000, there's 1% or 0% in the office, it doesn't seem reasonable to say that. So that's why we added that percentage and why it's so important to be accurate with that number. And so you just select the option. And can I give you a visual of what 2 cubic yards is? That would be approximately 1 dumpster that is 4 feet by 4 feet by 6 feet. So if you have 3 of those dumpsters that are bigger than that or the same size as that, you would be selecting 2 or more. The less than 2 cubic yards would, a good example of that would be if you just had kind of those regular 96-gallon carts that probably most of you have at your house. Like if you just have 3 of those, that would be a good example of the less than 2 cubic yards at your location. So for this example, we'd say 2 or more. Question 3, we simplified down. So this is only applying to the agencies that operate food service facilities. And we have the little tooltip here. So if you do not manage food, then you select no food service at this location. And it's 100% okay to say that. However, if you do operate a food service facility here, you want to select the programs you have in place for source reducing that food waste, so prior to disposal. It's also okay to dispose it if it's spoiled, but if it's fit for human consumption, expectation of 1383 is to donate that food for food recovery, or so those less fortunate can eat it. Or you're taking steps to minimize that food waste to begin with. An example of that would be if you serve food, you're only giving 1 scoop of mashed potatoes instead of 2. And if they want more, they can come back and get more instead of just giving them the excess food that they may just dispose of. And then if you are, the self-haul here is if you're self-hauling that edible food to a food recovery service or food recovery organization, you would select this box and then provide the name of that food recovery service or food recovery organization that you take that food to. This one, we're going to say there's no food service at this location. And the last question here is relating to what you said in number 1. And so for example purposes, I'm going to select them all so you can see all the potential options. So you can see, depending on what you select in 1, kind of categorizes it into 3 different categories with all the same potential options. On-site management would be if you yourself compost it, or if you have an anaerobic digester on site. If it's green waste and landscape and pruning waste, if you chip and grind it and leave it in place, that would be on-site management. The self-haul to organics is if you take it somewhere yourself instead of having a hauler pick it up. And so here, we added this here, depending on which materials you pick. So if you do have an approved waiver, you can just select this option here. So you are saying still that you generate these materials. But if you have an approved waiver, and we'll just use the reason of de minimis, so you don't produce enough of that waste. And again, I'm going to refer you to the waiver webinar or send an email to SARC, and we can go over the details of what de minimis means if you need an explanation of that. Really want to focus on the report itself today. So you just select the option here of how those materials are handled or diverted. If you select the hauler pickup, you just state the name of your hauler, whoever that may be. And you need to do it per category. So in our example here, Republic Services collects all that diverted material for us. Any questions on this section?
Yeah, I have a couple. One actually stated that somebody can't see your full screen, so I'm not sure if that's everybody or, oh, just kidding, he said it's corrected. We do have a question from Joe Peterson that states, what if you have a food vendor on site like Subway?
So if you don't have direct control, like employees in that location, you would be selecting, no food service at this location. This is for if you have control over that operation in some way, you would be expected to do these top 3 options.
Okay, and then we do have another question from Ignacio saying, for food service, if DGS handles, then do we need to check this box?
So that would be on DGS at those facilities to either be donating that food. And again, it's kind of the same thing. Like if you don't have direct control, if your agency doesn't have control over the management of that food or the employees working at that location, then you would be selecting no food service on site. DGS would be responsible for reporting to us what they're doing for edible food recovery in those locations.
Okay, and then we have one more question. What if we do a combination of self-hauling and hauler pickup?
Interesting. I think I'd be curious to hear what your example is of the combination.
This one is an anonymous participant, so I'm not sure who asked the question.
Got you. I think, so to answer your question, you can go one of 2 ways. I think you could pick either one of these options because it won't let you pick both. And so just kind of type that here, whatever it may be. And I guess I do want to point out that if you are self-hauling green waste, but then a hauler does your food waste, it's already split apart for you. I don't know if that's potentially what's going on.
I have unmuted Laura. She would like to further explain.
Perfect.
Yeah. Hi. So we do a combination of both things. So we do on site all the green waste, but for the food scraps, it's actually a vendor who does it, but we collect all the kitchen scraps and run it to worms vermicomposting on site, and the post-consumer is taken by the hauler at last disposal.
Okay, so green waste you said you do on site, right?
And a small portion of the food scraps as well.
With the vermicompost?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there should be enough room but hauler takes most of it.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. I would select hauler pickup in that particular example, and you can state the hauler, and then there's enough room here, and you could just say this as well, right? You can it's nothing wrong with kind of providing a little extra information there.
Thank you. We got a notice last year because of it, so I wanted to make sure to do it right this time.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, that's a good question.
And I'm not seeing anything else.
Okay, well, excellent. So when you are done here, let's see if I filled all my boxes correctly. It looks like I did. You select save. And you can see right there that I have successfully entered. So before I go to facilities, just go back to programs here. And so you can see over here that I have completed all those entries. I don't really have any red text. And then if we go back to summary, oh, I must have missed something. I feel like this happened once before. So I will point it out because this is the second time I've experienced this, is that after, there it goes. There does seem to be some sort of bug. I don't know if you all saw that, but now it's saying program section is complete. So if I go back here, yeah, so now it's giving me a green check mark. I'm not really sure what's going on, and I probably need your help to identify what is going on here. But there does appear to be a slight bug in here, and I don't know if it's because I'm going out of order. So if you look at your summary section, even if after, like I did, you went to each one of them, you still have a red check mark here. Go into the program section, go into each one of these, edit, save, and I won't do them all. Just all the way down after you've entered that information. And I think it should give you the green check mark if you don't have it. And then if any of you out there see a specific combination, if you could relay that to us at sarc@calrecycle.ca.gov, that would be really helpful for us so we can let our developers know what's going on so they can fix that. But just something I've noticed twice now, so I think it's definitely something on our end. Okay, facility organics. It's the same kind of spiel we just did on the organics recycling for your headquarters, but you have to do it for each facility. This particular example, we only have the one facility. Many of you have many more of those, so you have to do it for each section. And it'll be the same process, they're the same questions, so you select all that apply, kind of all the way down here. And then you select save. And then you'll see that facility organics is done. So you can kind of see here, I've now finished that section as well. So now that I've completed all, my final step, and I'm not going to click on it just for example purposes here, but my final step on the summary page is to submit my annual report. I would like to point out just a couple of things prior to submitting. I'm not going to submit it in this particular example, but just make sure you have everything updated and entered as you want it before clicking that button. After you submit it, and especially after the May 1st deadline of reporting it, we won't be able to unsubmit that report for you, so you can make adjustments. You can still tell us about things, but just double check everything's correct before clicking this submit annual report button. One thing I want to point out too is this area here. So if there's anything that didn't quite fit into one of these categories over here and you want to tell us a little bit more information, you can utilize this box right here to do so. The reports button, I think, allows you to, just to show you this, get to old reports if you want to take a look at them. Select the year. You can go back and look at any of those PDFs. All right, so that is the end of walking you through the SARC report and all the changes we made to it. Are there any more questions on anything at all about the report?
So far, I'm not seeing any, but while we wait a minute, Andrew, I'm still having a hard time finding the link for the previous recording. If you have it handy, I will post it to the chat, but if not, I will post it, or I'll continue looking for it.
So the link, the main link is going to be this waivers webpage. And then, I don't know, the third paragraph down right here is where the actual webinar is. So
Okay.
you can click on the YouTube. Do you have that link still available?
I have that link posted.
Okay.
So that's perfect. Thank you for pointing that out.
So there's the actual webinar. You can either look at the YouTube recording or the PowerPoint presentation, but I would recommend the YouTube recording because there's definitely some question and answers in there about particulars, and it really walks through each part of what those slides are showing you. And then especially if you're trying to squeeze those waivers in and having us process them prior to the report opening next week, the less back and forth we have to do, the more likely we'll be able to process those prior to the report opening. And we'll hang out for a few minutes here just to make sure nothing else comes to mind. Where did my report go? I'm happy to go back any one of these tabs or re-explain something if something didn't make sense. If there's any questions at all, or if anything's unclear about any of these sections.
We have a question from Joe Peterson. Can we submit waivers after the SARC report is released next week?
You can, yeah, there's no deadline to submitting waivers. You can submit those at any time. The only reason I'm recommending getting them submitted prior to the report opening up next week is just kind of the word here, really approved, right? You can't select this option if you don't have an approved waiver for how that material is generated. You can still explain it to us that you think you may qualify and that you're in process, but you won't be able to select this option here of how that material is actually generated in this section. So yes, you can submit it after the fact, but what's probably going to happen is that our enforcement branch who reviews these reports might question why you selected the approved waiver if you did not, or if you say no organic material generated at this location. There'd just be some follow-up there in that compliance cycle to really verify whether or not organics are generated and if you do have approved waiver in place.
Okay, and there's another question from Laura on food recovery programs. How do you report an internal program? It is not an external organization or program. And I am going to unmute Laura if you want to explain a little better.
Yes, thank you. So when we went to the edible food recovery programs, you mentioned you put the name of the organization. We do it on house. So if we have extra food, we just donate it to the students. I'm from Sacramento State University. How do I report that?
I would select the self-haul option and then you can explain that here.
Okay, thank you.
And then we have another question from Amy. Can we go over reporting the percentage of telework versus in-office staff again?
Of course. Okay, so I'm going to start here. So agency tab is where you report the number of employees at headquarters. In the disposal section, you can kind of see it's summing up both your facilities and headquarters number here. And then this number here is where you'd report on the percentage of employees in the office at headquarters. In the agency tab, if you have facilities, you're going to report that percentage down here. And then I'm assuming you want an explanation on determining percentage, or did that answer your question?
Determining the percentage, please.
Yeah, so the important part when you're determining that percentage, and I'm going to go back to the section where is here of how you went about determining that factor. And so the example that we use here is that if staff are required to come in 1 day per week, since there's 5 days in a week typically, that would be 20% of employees are in the office. Does that help give you a rough idea?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. And really the important piece is if what I'm saying is an example isn't how you'd go about figuring it out, just tell us here in this box how you did figure it out. That's really all we're kind of looking for here, is a reasonable explanation of how you came about your numbers. Any other questions?
I'm not seeing anything at the moment.
Okay. I think we'll probably give it until like 11:05, so about 4 more minutes, just in case anything pops up for anyone. While we're waiting, I'll go back to this here. So we just did this one. So that one's about done, but there is another opportunity next week, March 20th on Monday from 1 to 3. We have another Zoom. It'll be the same one as we just did. Same walkthrough of the reporting process, but another opportunity if you want to answer your question live. You could come back to that webinar and attend it again. And then as soon as we do get these processed, we will post these. And they're going to be, and since I have a minute, think here, let me. Oops. I'll show you where they're going to be. So state agent, so if you do a search, state agency, waste management for state agencies, they'll be in this section here. So right now we have this. You might get some good information, but all these videos are based on the old structure. It's not going to answer any of the new updates that are brand new for this reporting cycle. So this is what we'll update. It's not in here yet, even though it says new, right? That's not quite accurate, but this is where they'll be. And if we could share that link in chat of where they'll be, we'll let you know. And that by let you know, we'll send out a listserv message to all the recycling coordinators. So if you're not identified as a recycling coordinator in our system, you'll want to touch base with your recycling coordinator to have them forward those to you when we do send out that message. So just be on the lookout for that. Going to try to get them processed as close to the report release as possible so you can use them as a reference, but it might take a little bit because we wanted to edit them to put markers in them, hopefully, so you can better navigate to a particular section instead of having to kind of guess where we talked about a particular subject.
So I do have one more question. So if you have a hybrid situation where some staff telework 1 day a week, others 2 days a week, and others 3, etc., how do we calculate the percentage?
Yeah, I would average it, generally speaking. So tell us the number they're doing one day, tell us the number they're doing 2, tell us the number they're doing 3, average those together for what you actually put in the number box. But more importantly, describe that situation you just mentioned down here.
I don't see any more questions, but I do have someone with their hand raised. Would you like me to unmute them to ask their question?
Please.
Okay. Daniel, you should be unmuted now.
Yes, I am. I'm trying to put a question in the chat, but it only goes directly to Andrew Parrish.
Got you. I did not see
But I'll
that.
just ask the question.
Mm-hmm.
We have to report percentages of each office, but I have 84 offices. Do I have to do all the offices in the state or just the one I'm working from?
If you're responsible for reporting for all of those, yeah, and you know, unfortunately, in your particular situation, yes, you do need to put that in there, and that's going to give us cancel out of this. I know in this particular example, there's only one, but you know, you'll have many here, many pages. But yes, right here in that column, however long it is where you put that percentage.
So it'll be one report, but I'll have 84 lines on. I can't just clump it all into one.
Nope, because we need to know per facility.
Okay,
And I'm trying to find, looks like it signed me out again. I was going to show you one that had a few more options just so you can get a general feel of what it looks like. I can get my password right. Goes a little slow in our staging environment.
so I have to report like how much of each kind of waste each office has for 84 offices?
No, not on that. I'll get to that. I'll answer that question in just a moment. Let me show you this part
Okay.
first. Just so you get a general sense of the employees and the percentage of employees in the office. So it would be like this, right? But you'll have many pages
Okay,
with many columns. So yeah, so yes, per facility here on employees and percentage of employees in each of those facilities. And yes, to all facilities needing to report on organic specifically information and how that's managed.
okay,
But as far as recycling and disposal, so in this program section in recycling, waste prevention, material exchange, green procurement, training, education, you lump all that together for headquarters and facilities as far as your kind of what your state agency program is for
okay,
all of your facilities and headquarters. And then disposal also will be total disposal.
okay.
That answer all your questions?
Yes. I mean, I have a million questions that I don't even know what they are yet. So I can ask my boss, but if any of my questions you feel like will benefit the group, then of course, yeah, then answer them, but
Yeah, we
Um,
have time. Let's jump to Ignacio because I see another hand raised and then we'll come back to you. Does that sound okay?
yeah, no, actually, I'm good. I'm done.
And then also just generally speaking, you know, I'm sure questions will pop up as you actually get into the report yourself. We're always available. You can email the SARC inbox, sarc@calrecycle.ca.gov, and we can assist you through that process. We have a lot of team members to help you out with that.
Okay.
And all right, I see another hand for Ignacio.
Hi, Andrew. Just a quick question. You mentioned that something is being released next week. Is that for the new report, that for the 2022 that we have to report, or is something else?
No, the new one. Normally we release it March 1st, but we didn't want to open up the reporting cycle without having an opportunity to explain the changes we made. So that's why we delayed it until the 21st, until after all these trainings.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions before we go back to Daniel?
I'm not seeing any.
All right, you want to unmute Daniel? We can answer your questions.
Yeah, I guess I don't know what my questions are.
Okay.
So when I'm doing the report, can I save it and do it over a period of time, like a week or a month? As
Yes.
I gather information?
Yeah, so once you kind of have that, you know, you're gonna not, you won't have as many options as I have over here, right? I think you'll probably just have home and annual report, I think. Maybe not even that.
Okay,
But yeah, so as you go here, like I have them all because, you know, I'm admin, so I can see them all. I'll just go back to just the one, right? This is what will probably look like on your screen. And so you'll come in here and then you'll have, you know, it'll tell you your progress. So as you go into each section and you edit, save, it's saving that work that you did. So
Okay.
as long as you've selected save, it'll save that progress.
Okay,
And there's lots of buttons, right? Each of these sections kind of has, oops, that's not what I wanted to do. Well, I guess if you wanted to add a contact, you'd also click save. But as you enter each one of these pieces, as long as you're edit saving, it'll save that progress.
okay,
And then down here, the only exception to that, it's slightly different. You need to click these buttons for it to save the numbers you input over here.
okay. Also, those YouTube videos that you mentioned that are not new anymore, will
Mhm.
they be updated? And if so, when can we watch them?
Yeah, we will update that. Do I still have that page open?
And that would be
Here.
my last question.
Yeah, so yes, the new videos will go right here to replace these. So if you're clicking, honestly, I think it'll probably be more the end of the month of when these will be updated, because we really wanted to put markers in them, and that process is a little bit beyond my control. But we want to put markers in them so it makes them easier to navigate. And I'm hoping to get those up by the end of the month, so you at least have the entire month of April to review the videos and use them to fill out your report prior to the May 1st deadline. But they'll be here. We'll send out that listserv messages when they are updated to the recycling coordinators.
Thank you.
Mhm. I don't know if Ignacio had another question or not. Nope, I guess not. Are there any other questions? Should we check on the SARC inbox? Are there any questions in the SARC inbox?
The questions that have come in have already answered and responded, so we're good to go.
Excellent, thank you.
And I'm
Yeah.
not seeing any other chat questions, so.
Okay, okay. We'll give it just a few more minutes here. Seems like they're trickling in just a little bit. I mean, now's a good time if you want me to show you anything on these reports to ask your questions. And I'm sure if you're thinking them, other people have the same questions. So happy to go through any of these other sections and either just go over the whole section or one component of the section. I'll give it like 3 minutes. So it looks like on my clock, at least about 11:16, even though it just kicked over. So we'll go 11:17. We'll just kind of hang out here just to make sure there's no more questions trickling in. If there's not, we'll go ahead and end the recording. And while we're waiting, so we did already kind of show you, and I think shared the link in the page, but here's the website for general state agency information. And then for those of you that have been around a while, we did recently switch our structure from having an individual local assistance market development representative help you out to more of a team-based structure. And so any questions you have at all or need help or assistance, you want to email your questions to the email address on the screen here, sarc@calrecycle.ca.gov, and then one of the team members will follow up with you to either work one-on-one with you or answer your question through email. And that includes if you missed the Zoom meeting invite for March 20th, if you want to come back and listen to this spiel again. So I'll have one more training next Monday prior to releasing the report.
We do have one question. Can you please go over the mattresses again?
Sure, it's a good question. Okay, so oops, I'm not in the right section. All right, so mattresses used to exist kind of dispersed within the various programs within the programs. To make it easier, since it seemed just really fragmented, we just moved all of the mattress questions up front, and they are required. So you do at a minimum, even if you don't handle or deal with mattresses, have to put zeros in these boxes. This last box down here, this is an optional box if you want to explain anything. You don't have to put anything down there. So this, again, I guess just come back up to the top. All mattress information is in the disposal tab, all the way at the bottom. And so I'll just activate it so you can see what it looks like from your perspective. So you just enter the numbers here of disposed, recycled, reused, exchanged, if any of those apply to you. And then you can provide an explanation on why they're disposed or how they're recycled or how they're reused or how they're exchanged or where they go in this optional text box down below. Does that answer your question on the mattresses?
Yes, it does. I'm aware we pick up some on the side of the highway. So that's why I just wanted to make sure that we were reporting on that.
Got you. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, good.
I'm not seeing any other questions.
Okay, well, kind of resetting the clock because it seems like they're still trickling. So we'll just give it just a couple more minutes to see if there's anything else anyone would like me to go back to and re-explain or explain further or explain differently. And then I'll just put this on here. If anything comes to mind later, you can always email us as well. And I guess while we're waiting too, I know there can be a lot of changing hands as well. So it's really beneficial for us if, recycling coordinators move on, if either the recycling coordinator or their supervisor can email us and let us know. It's helpful for us to have those current contacts so that when we do have these trainings come out or any additional information we want to share with all agencies to make reporting easier or resources available to you, it's really important for us to have the right contacts in place so they get to the right people. All right, I'll give it just one more minute here and then we're going to sign off if we don't get anything else.
Still not seeing anything.
Nothing here on the inbox either.
All right, thank you. Yeah, we'll give it till I have it's 11:19 on my clock, so we'll give it until 11:20 and then we'll sign off. And we got everything in the chat. There's nothing anywhere else. Just want to make sure we have all the spots checked.
Nope. Should be good.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, just ticked over to 11:20. I'll just do a final check, even though I just did, just to make sure there's nothing else, and then we're going to sign off.
I'm not seeing anything in the chat or in the Q&A section.
All right, well, thank you very much for attending. And again, there's one more on Monday the 20th from 1 to 3. And if you didn't get that Zoom link, we can reshare that with you. Just email us at sarc@calrecycle.ca.gov. Thank you so much for attending. Have a great day.